you hear about just real estate prices going like crazy, residential and commercial. What percentage increase was it from when you got it 3 years ago to here? About the same.
None, exactly the same.
Wow.
The folks next door had a pretty unfortunate set of events happen in a very short succession. And they were looking to unload. And that was the other part that was like, man, I just can't pass it. Like, I couldn't pass it up. It was
so that building has what, 8 bays in it?
6.
So 6. When are the other 3 going to become available too? And it's just going to be the IncuHub entirety? I mean, is that the goal at this point now?
No.
He's like,
I mean, no. In fact, that just last Tuesday, one of the units became available, and the owner called me. He's like, hey, you want this? You know you want it.
Why do you say no in that case? Why? Like, what was the?
Yeah, it was there was a unit between the adjoint units that I own and that unit, and I couldn't connect them. And I think being connected.
Dude, have you ever been to Chuck E. Cheese? You totally can connect them. You can get like one of those like mouse things and pull that around and like.
Oh wow!
Yeah, your imagination never ceases to amaze me.
Hey,
but that would be awesome.
You couldn't do it. I just gave you a reason to put a slide in there, like a ball pit. Talk about dirty. Like, let's go.
No, I mean, if anything, you know, and I've had a number of different conversations with different folks who really think this is a good idea. And honestly, from a business perspective, it's been really, really good. It's low maintenance. You know, just there's not that much to keep it going. But the benefits for my other companies and for everybody else's, they've just been great. It's a mutually beneficial sort of space, and it runs itself more or less. So I think duplicating this concept outside of Portsmouth may be something that we'll look for in the future.
So you're bringing that up. I want to ask that question. So that was my next question.
Yeah, but there's a lot that goes into that. And I want to backtrack just a second, Zach, because one thing that you did, Marko, is that you built community first, start with a smaller space, build the community, build the energy, and then expand. It's really, really tough to start with a giant space. And even if you had 100 businesses in a giant space, there is no sense of energy. There's no sense of community. It's really, really tough. So your approach, in my opinion, was the smart approach.
Well, it was a safe approach, honestly. If it failed, it would have been not a big deal. I would have had an office for my IT company, right? I would have had to pay for that anyway.
But again, but sometimes safe is the smart approach as well.
There was a bar. There was a bar on Granby Street. I can't remember the name of it, and they had a corner unit of the street. And it was small, 30 seats, the entire bar. 2 doors down, they are able to move into 120 top. I think it was called Empire, actually, now that I think about it. They moved to that spot 3 doors down, 2 doors down, something like that. 120, way bigger. 3 months, they're closed. It completely changed. So it's interesting how that, even in the expansion aspect of that, it didn't work. Even though they had such a big crowd before, it's always interesting to see how expansion works and doesn't. And it is a tricky thing. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, if the ambiance is what changed, if it was people didn't see anything. But I mean, Tim's right. It is very difficult. And to piggyback off of what he was saying, it's like there are a ton of other co-working spaces in this area.
Dude.
And the big names don't seem to be working.
Well, and because, it's not a community first approach. People just think, hey, man,
they sell community. Everyone has community on their like byline, if you will.
But to sell it and to have it are two different things.
Right.
Well, but how as a business going in there do I know that there isn't that or there is?
It starts with intimacy.
Right.
You know, Tim, you hit the nail on the head. The IncuHub, I mean, other than you know, that being the financially viable and perhaps smart approach, we're starting small. The IncuHub is small, and I think the sweet spot for us has been no more than what the size that we're right now. As soon as we start dispersing folks, the community aspect goes away. If I were to purchase the units that were not adjacent, even with the little mouse thing that you're talking about, Zach, we'd probably lose that. And besides that, there are additional costs When you have multiple spaces, then now you've got multiple alarm systems. You have to replicate everything that you already have inside of your building elsewhere, right? So staying smaller, tighter, and community-based is the way to go. With the difference being is the size of the space doesn't necessarily equal the size of your membership, because if you to become a member at the IncuHub, you've got multiple options. You can have a mailbox, right, where you register your mail or register your company at the IncuHub. So when you're receiving mail, it goes to a commercial address versus your home. So when someone Googles you, they don't find your house. Or if someone is dissatisfied with your service, they're not knocking at your door and your daughter is opening up the door and saying, hey, how can I help you, right? So I think that's a starting point. For $29, you register your company. You've got a brick and mortar that everyone knows now you're a pro, right? Besides that, you don't have to have an office to be at the IncuHub. I mean, you can have, for example, you can have access to a shared desk twice a week. So say you're like many of us now, we work from home. We've thought of an idea. We'd like to be part of a community, but we really don't need an office. We don't need the $400, $500, $600 a month of a cost, but we want to be able to go somewhere, on Mondays and Wednesdays, right? To just be part of a community, to get out the house, and have access to conference rooms if you want to invite someone for an interview or meet a client, right? For $75 at the IncuHub, you have that. You can come work twice a week, any day of the week. You can have access to conference rooms, coffee printing, email, internet. That's all included. So everything that you need to be productive is there, right? If you want to do the same thing 5 days a week, $145. So at a low cost, you become a part of a community. You register your business. You come work. You network. You hang out with like-minded folks. And then beyond that, say you would permanently like to be somewhere, but you don't want an office. You can't afford an office. For $195 a month, you can have a desk. Try to beat that anywhere else in our region, period, or anywhere, right? For $395 and up, you've got an office. So what I'm trying to say, that the business model from the IncuHub, yes, it's community-based, but the space is not the limiting factor of how many members we can have and how strong of a community we can build. Inside of 10,000 square feet, which we are right now, we have 100 different companies, and that's awesome. If Zack, you start a company and you need a notary service or you need an accountant, well, you better believe there is one of those businesses at the IncuHub now. And we all co-work. We all know each other. We trust each other. We have to see each other every day. So we're going to do right what's by us, So
that leads me to a question. So if you, do you, as the person running IncuHub, do you look at it and say, gosh, we really could use a business that does X, and then we actively market that so that you can further round out your ecosystem or your community that you're building? Or you just say, come one, come all, let's just fill this joint and have fun with it?
The latter. And I've been intentional about that. Originally, the thought was, oh, maybe I'll invite like-minded tech companies to come join me. But the reality is that as small business owners, our concerns are the same, regardless of our business type, on so many different areas, right? We all need to be our own HR experts. We all need to be our own legal experts. We all need to be our own accountants. We all have to sell. We all have to market, right? And we all have to network. So the power of a diverse group, and that just doesn't just go for business, but it goes in life in general. The more diverse, the better. The wider range of thoughts, the wider range of ideas. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to someone, Julius Del Campo, for example, that owns a multi-million-dollar janitorial service company, right? He does government business. Well, the government procurement process is the same, whether you're running a janitorial services company or an IT company, right? Julius has been my mentor. I can't tell you, having an accountant on board, how many times I was like, just in passing, going like, hey, look, I'm facing this issue. What are your thoughts on this? Right? I could have Googled that, and Google doesn't answer questions, doesn't answer dynamic questions that I have that are specific to my business, other than me spending hours and hours and hours. Whereas Kim could have just turned around, or Eric could have just turned around and been like, hey, look, don't do that. That's a bad idea. Hey, look into this.
The community aspect / the aspect of meeting people, coming up and kind of looking over your shoulder, if you will, to some, that is a deterrent where they don't want those people. They need to get work done, not be hounded. How do you combat that?
You know what? We have zero issues with that. We are a get your work done place first, with a side consequence of networking happens while you're there anyway. So I generally don't. I mean, we have lists where members. So we have a platform where members can contact each other. But personally, other than, if someone says, "Hey, do you know an accountant that I can reach out to?" I'll put them in touch via email. It'll be a very personal introduction, and I've encouraged others to do the same. But we don't really take salespeople. Our doors are locked. People can't just walk in and start advertising to our folks. We wouldn't allow that.
And the thing that's really interesting with that community is that it's the thing that's so interesting about a community like you have is it's so self-policing. I mean, if you're going in there and you're super salesy and that's all you're about, you're going to get weeded out real quick, and it doesn't take long.
But we've had, for example, and not this industry is can be very lucrative, but it's very salesy. Financial advisors, dime in a dozen that came in. Hey, can I talk to your members? They're thinking business owners. They've got money, and I was like, hey, look, man, no. I'm not selling my list to you so you can start cold calling people. So I wouldn't personally allow that. And equally, the IncuHub is a month-to-month place. And I, could I have asked someone to sign a lease for half a year? Yeah, I could have done it because everybody else does it, right? But we intentionally made the IncuHub a month-to-month place because we want you to be there if you want to be there, if you can afford to be there. I personally am not going to chase someone over $29, $75, $400. I don't have that time.
Your time's not worth it. That's right.
If you can't pay, then that's fine. At the end of the month, you can leave. That's perfectly fine. Equally, if you want to upgrade, downgrade, each month you can change. So 1 month you had a mailbox, things are going really well. You need an office, you get an office. 4 months later, the office is too expensive. It was not worth the effort. I want to switch back down to a shared desk membership. Change it anytime you'd like. But what that gives us also is our members have the ability to upgrade, downgrade, leave, come whenever they would like. But it also gives us the community an out, right? If I have a lease with someone, unless it's specifically written into the lease, and that's tricky, if someone doesn't fit in, we can't just say, hey, look, leave. But now, if you're month to month, if you don't fit inside the community and you are an irritant for whatever reason, the community can get together and say, look, this person has been nothing but trouble. Can we talk about this? And we haven't had to do that very often. We've done it only once, 1.5, but once. And it was a relatively, quick process. We had, this was, I mean, it's a very amicable process too, because it was conversation, relationship based, right? We had a counselor that did, substance abuse counseling. And I initially understood, and it may be, how it was communicated, that her office was going to be used for administrative purposes for a counseling space. Well, next thing you know, our kitchen turns into a waiting room. And there are people coming in and out. The doorbell's ringing all the time. Folks are bringing their kids, which is fine, but not in our space, right? And we talked about that, and I was like, hey, look, this is definitely different than what we had originally discussed. I understand, you've got a business to run, but I need you to start looking for a different place, because the way your business is running, it really needs to be in a health space, healthcare sort of space, rather than here. You'll appear more professional than keeping people waiting in a kitchen. And also our folks won't be as distracted as they are right now. So that was that. And we gave them 2-3 months to find out.
Was that the one or the half?
That's the 1.5.
The other half.
You don't have to give us the story.
Yeah, it was, it's important. We're a community-based place, right? We respect each other and we respect the space. And there was one person who just sort of treated it as I can walk in with muddy boots, trek through all the carpet because I'm coming from a construction site, and someone will clean that up, right? And we're like, come on, man.
Yeah, I always handpicked companies at Hatch. Like I wanted to get to know them first. Like if someone walked in, they could not get a space. If someone's like, "Hey, I want this," then but they're like, "Well, there's a space here." I'm like, "Yeah, but it doesn't work like that. Like I got to make sure that these things are going to gel. Like I need to get through that honeymoon phase." And I feel like that actually was very beneficial because only the right companies would come through. And oftentimes it was me offering it to someone where it's like, "Hey, here's this opportunity. I think there could be some good gelling between these, all this and see what happens." And I was able to pull that off, I guess, for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I think our process is slightly different, yet I think it's got the same outcome.
Sure.
I love meeting people, and even when I'm not there, I make sure that our community managers meet the people first, and that they talk about the space and what the expectations for the space are. Even when someone signs up online, we have a phone conversation. People come in, we always give them a tour, and that's where we get a feel for one another. And then we have the option to opt out or opt in, right? And it goes both ways. That this is the type of space we run. These are the expectations for you. Here's a welcome packet that tells you, our do's and our don'ts. And if this works for you, great. And if not, that's okay too. And if you think it works for you now and it doesn't work so in a month, you can leave on your own accords, and equally we can also do it that way. And once people understand that we are really community based and it's all about kindness and respect, then they treat the space differently too, and they fit in, I think more easily. So we set those expectations up front, and we don't have those issues generally.
How do you end?